Welcome back. I hope you are enjoying the course. Quite a vast subject and difficult to decide as to what to take on first and what next. In this lesson, we shall be talking something about depository participants, and the clearinghouse. There is an old saying which goes like this, that if you are just interested in eating the mangoes, then why count the trees? So if you are just interested in buying and selling shares, not beyond that, then this lesson may be of no interest to you. You may skip this lesson. But I believe that this course is not just about buying and selling shares. It is about a comprehensive understanding of the stock market. And therefore, for the sake of knowledge, we need to understand as to what is a depository, what is a depository participant, and a clearinghouse. Now let me tell you that in olden days, till about early 1990s, if you bought shares from a company through the IPO or the initial public offer, then you would get a share certificate which looks something like this. This is the front face of a share certificate which we used to get in the earlier days, and this is the reverse or the back side of the same share certificate. Now this share certificate contains the name of the person who is holding the shares, the quantity of the shares, and other things like the folio number and various other things. Once you sell the shares, then this certificate by the new purchaser, he has to send this certificate to the transfer agents of the company, who would endorse the name of the new shareholder at the back of the certificate like this, sign it, and then return it to the new owner. That is how the share transactions took place. The new shareholder's name would be endorsed on the reverse of the share certificate, and the custody of the share certificate would remain with the new shareholder. But in modern days, in today's times, there are no share certificates as such. Everything is in the digital form. So who holds the custody of your share? Something which is called as your share in a company. Who holds the custody of that digital record? That custody is held by an agency who is nominated by the stock exchange. It is a one particular agency who are the custodians of your shares, and that custodian is called as the depository. So for a given stock exchange, there will be a nominated depository. That depository will hold or keep the custody of shares of all the companies, all the shares which are transacted on that stock exchange. The custody of those shares are with that depository. All right. Your demat account does not hold any shares. The demat account is only reflecting a record of your shares which are held in the depository. You may be having more than one demat account, and each of that demat account will show the shares or the name of the companies which you have purchased in that particular demat account. But all that collectively are held at one place, that is the depository, and the depository keeps sending you a statement on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis of all the shareholdings which you have. Got the point? So when you sell the shares, the depository will amend the name of the owner, because the shares are there or the record is there with the depository. Whenever you sell away your shares, the information goes to the depository, and the depository will change the name to the new shareholder. All right. In India, we have these two depositories. One is called as the National Securities Depository Limited, which is promoted by the National Stock Exchange, and the other one is the Central Depository Services Limited, that is promoted by the Bombay Stock Exchange. There are two, because in India we have got these two major stock exchanges. But normally a country would have only one depository. Just for your knowledge, if you would like to know, in the United States, that depository is called as the Depository Trust Company. In the United Kingdom, it is called as the CREST. Then in Canada, it is called as the Canadian Depository for Securities Limited. In New Zealand, it is the New Zealand Central Securities Depository. And then you have something called as the Finnish Central Securities Depository Limited. Got the point? So now you have understood that there is a stock exchange and the public is connected with the stock exchange through their respective brokers, the buyers and the sellers. The buyers and the sellers place their orders through their terminal, their laptops, the keyboard. The stock exchange will only execute the order. But the shares are not held in the stock exchange. The shares are held at some other place, as I have just told you, and that is the depository, the central depository. So all the shares which are transacted on the stock exchange of all the companies are actually held here. Alright. So the name change or the ownership change has to happen here in the depository. But who will inform the depository? Somebody has to give a clearance that everything is fine, everything is in order, the payment for the shares have been received. Now you can change the name of the owner. That information somebody has to give to the depository, isn't it? But the stock exchange does not give that information. The stock exchange is not equipped to give that information. The stock exchange is only matching the buyer and the seller and executing that order. All right. That verification and information after due clearance is given by somebody, what is called as a clearing house. So the clearing house will verify the authenticity of the buyer and the seller and their shares, and then they will give a confirmation to the depository that fine, everything is in order, please change the ownership of the shares. All right. But the problem is that there is only one or maybe two depositories in the country. For every exchange, there is only one. But the people are in millions and billions. The depository is not in a position to interact with the public and solve their problems. So the depository does not directly interact with the public. The depositories have got something called as the depository participant. Depository participant are basically those agencies or those firms which participate in the depository process. They form a link between the buyers or the sellers and the depository. The buyer will also have a depository participant. The seller will also have a depository participant, and they are interchangeable. The same depository participant can function for the buyer also and for the seller also. They are basically a link between the depository and the public. All right. Another problem is that the clearinghouse also does not interact directly with the public. They also find that the task is humongous. They cannot interact with the public for their verification and everything. So clearinghouse have got something called as clearing agents. Like depository participants, there are a large number of clearing agents. The task of these clearing agents is to verify the authenticity of the buyers and the sellers and then give a confirmation to the depository to change the ownership of the shares. Quite confusing? You may be wondering that the buyers and the sellers have to do all this Herculean task of interacting with these three agencies. No, not at all. Because all these three tasks, the brokers, the depository participant and the clearing agent, all these three functions are performed by the same agency. The same person or the same agency is doing all these three tasks behind the curtain. You may call them by any name. You may call them the broker, you may call them the trading member, you may call them the depository participant, depending upon the country in which you are and what slang is used over there. You may call them by that name. But ultimately, the same agency is doing all these three functions, and then they are charging you a small fees for that. Normally, it is called as the broker's fee or the brokerage charges. Alright, so now you have understood that the stock exchange is a place where the orders get executed. The buyers and the sellers, from the comfort of their house or their rooms, even their bedrooms, they just place the buy and sell order using the keyboard of their laptops. The orders get executed in the stock exchange. Then the behind the curtain work starts. The clearing house will start verifying the authenticity. For the clearing house, the clearing agents will work. Who are these same people? The broker, the trading member, or the DP. They will do all that verification. Then they will inform the depository to change the ownership. All this process takes about 2 days. And therefore, when you buy some shares in your demat account, they are reflected into your demat account on the third day at T+2, that is transaction date, plus 2 more days. Because all these behind the curtain activities take about 2 days for execution. You as buyer and seller do not come to know what is happening behind the scene. You remain comfortable in your rooms, just place your order using your keyboard, and all this back office work is done by these agencies, for which they charge you a small fee. So as a buyer or a seller of the shares, you may or may not know all what this happens behind the curtain. But it is always good to know this as a matter of knowledge. Alright?